Well, criminals convicted of specific serious crimes who were born overseas will have their deportations fast-tracked at twice the pace under a Morrison government crackdown to remove legal loopholes, allowing criminals to remain in the country. Character tests have been used to cancel or refuse the visas of more than 10,000 foreign criminals since 2014. Under current laws, foreign criminals can avoid deportation if they receive a sentence for under 2 years in prison. The bill will allow the government to deport offenders if they receive less than 1 year's imprisonment. Well, let's go to Canberra now, and joining us live is the Immigration Minister, Alex Hawke. Minister, thanks for your time this morning. So you want to lower the bar here. This has been rejected last year. How much different is this version to that one that was blocked last October?
Yeah, well, you're right, Pete. Good morning. The government has had this legislation before the Parliament for over 1,200 days now. And the reason we've done that is because these laws not only allow us to deport foreign criminals who commit crimes here, but they also allow the government to stop people who've committed serious crimes overseas from ever coming here in the first place. That is crime prevention. It's really simple. It's good law, but the Labor Party and the Greens have blocked it in the House and the Senate. And the Leader of the Opposition, Anthony Albanese, has led the opposition against these foreign deportation laws. And he needs to explain why. We're coming to the end of this Parliament. The government believes we've got to pass these laws. We've got to give government more power to prevent crime and stop criminals here in Australia and deport them. But Anthony Albanese says no, and Adam Bandt, the Greens, say no as well. And I think they've got to explain that to the Australian people.
But what is a concrete example of someone that you can't already kick out?
So what happens in criminal deportations, and you've got to remember the Morrison government's done more than any other Australian government. Some people might think it's obvious to deport serious criminals overseas, but we've done 10,000 in our term of government, 4,000 since 2019, and whether that's the highest rate any government's ever done. We're constantly challenged in courts. Courts make rulings, and your viewers get very frustrated, like we do, when serious criminals, people who committed sexual offences, armed robberies, get off on technicalities, and they're technicalities of law. So the government's role is to make a better law. We've got this law in front of us to say not only can we deport someone who does an armed robbery or commits a sexual offence against a woman or a child more easily, but we can also stop them from coming here. So if you've committed a crime in another country of similar nature, we can deny your visa lawfully, and that's what we have to be able to do. And that's the function of a federal government. So for Labor and the Greens to say, no, we shouldn't be doing that, they're not looking at it seriously about how important this is to stop people coming here who've committed serious offences overseas in the first place.
Well, according to Section 116 of the Migration Act, you can cancel the visa of anyone that is or may be or would might be a risk to the health, safety or good order of Australia. So what will new changes allow you to do that you can't already?
Well, what the new changes do is designate those serious offences and the sentence. It spells out exactly the sentence capable of being sentenced of 2 years in an offence. And that means lawfully, if offshore you've been convicted, and remember that we're talking about convicted criminals here, convicted criminals. If you've done an armed robbery in another country and you've been sentenced or capable of being sentenced for 2 years, then we can deny you that visa. Now, yes, you can use different powers in different situations sometimes, but that doesn't help us where we have to prevent someone lawfully from coming here in the first place, and we need these powers. And these have been tested in courts many times. The public gets very upset because, and we do as a government as well, serious criminals sometimes overturn our system.
Right.
And Labor knows this. These laws are very straightforward. And this is also about more easily being able to deport people who commit crimes here in Australia as well.
But can it extend beyond that too? Because didn't Novak Djokovic show that you basically already have the power to boot out anybody?
No, well, there are different powers and different considerations under a different part of the Act. This is about criminals and how to deal with convicted criminals and people who come here and commit crimes. And it's constantly challenged in courts. You'd be surprised how often judges interpret the law in a way that means that a serious criminal has more rights sometimes than they ought to be afforded. And it's the role of the Parliament to make a better law and make sure that this is easier to deport foreign criminals.
Right.
Again, we're talking about sexual-based offences, offences against women, offences against children. We're talking about armed robberies, dangerous, violent crime. This should be an absolutely non-partisan issue, But Labor and the Greens have opposed and opposed and opposed this. I think they've got to come on this show like I am, look down the barrel of the camera and say, why do we oppose those bills? Why do Labor and the Greens oppose the deportation
Is there
of
a danger, though, that some of the crimes, I suppose, as Christina Keneally has said in the past, may become trivial?
No, absolutely not. And that's why we've designated only serious offences, very serious violent crimes. Now, the government personally would like to go a lot further, but we've put a bill forward. Labor knows it's a good bill. They know this is serious violent crime. I'm confident any Australian looking at it would agree with us that this is serious criminals we're talking about. Labor knows it. Inexplicably, they've joined with the Greens and opposed it for the last few years, and they continue to oppose it.
Just one more on the topic of character concerns. Senate estimates confirmed yesterday there are no concerns for Mehdi Ali, of course locked up for 9 years now. Why not release him?
Well, these are complex issues. Obviously, I won't comment on individual cases. Government is prevented from doing that, and so I can't comment on the individual case. When you look at the whole border protection system that the government set up, we stand by every element of it. People in these situations are offered resettlement in third-party countries. We're offered good quality countries to them, including places like the United States. The Parliament, of course, in the last term, Labor and the Greens pioneered the Medivac laws to allow people who were in offshore processing to come here for medical reasons. The government opposed that. We were able to overturn those laws. And as a consequence of that period where Labor and the Greens got their way in the Parliament, we have had more trouble created in our offshore and onshore systems. But we're working to resolve that lawfully, to offer people resettlement in third-party countries. But the government's position has not changed. No person who arrived here by boat will permanently resettle in Australia.
Do you agree that it's more cost effective for refugees to be in the community until they're resettled?
In general, yes, but there are complex considerations with different cohorts of people who come here through a Medivac law, which is now changed back by the Parliament. The government was able to overturn Labor and the Greens' law here that we didn't feel was right, that weakened our border protection system. And I find Australians are willing to pay for a strong border protection regime to protect us from what we saw, deaths at sea, people smugglers dictating our border policies. People are willing to pay for an onshore detention and offshore detention regime that protects us from that kind of
Works out to be a lot,
chaos.
though, per refugee, doesn't it?
Government does cost a lot, absolutely, but that's the purpose of government, to keep Australia safe, to keep our borders secure, and there is a price that comes with that.
Alex Hawke, appreciate your time.